So, the session is about branding, your personal and professional brand. Shh, please, please take your seats. And to lead us into this session, we have two experts I'm delighted we are able to have available for you. The first one is Laura Lulsdorf, who is with Egon Zehnder, and as many of you know, it's an executive search firm. And so she has seen many a resume, met thousands of people applying for high-level jobs. So she knows what brands work. And then our second speaker is Yulia Solovyeva, who is from Google, an executive from Google, and she knows how their platforms are used to develop brands. And so I want you to give both of them a very, very warm welcome and your attention.
So, good morning. Very tough act. I think we were all dreaming about the Virgin Islands, and now I have to take you back to reality about branding, but a great honor and pleasure to be here this morning with you. Now, when we talk about branding, I think it's really important to first establish why does this matter? And I know just looking around the room, a lot of you know, because a lot of you have gone through that journey of building your own brand. But it's good to bring us all back to reality. Why is that a topic we should care about at 8:30 in the morning in such a wonderful conference? Now, many people that we work with, and we typically work with board-level executives, with women and men who search their first board seat, with senior executives that would like to have a CEO position or another C-level position, we often get certain questions around branding. Why should I care? Now, especially from women, we always get the question, well, you know, I do great quality work. You can see in my CV, I'm very accomplished. Everyone will see that. And for sure, there's going to be a promotion, there's going to be a board seat, there's going to be another step in my career. The reality is that brand building is critical, especially if you're a senior. It is not obvious just by doing great work that the next step is in your future. In fact, studies have shown that you need a sponsor to get to the next level, and brands help with having a sponsor. You are much more likely to get either promoted or find the next job if someone is supporting you. Another question we often get, and a worry especially from female executives, is if I do this, I will stand out. I will be perceived as a diva. I will not be liked anymore by others because it will be perceived as too much about me. And that's uniquely female, even for very senior, accomplished women. Now, the reality is that at the senior executive level, at the board level, it cannot be about popularity. It's about authenticity. And we will talk about authenticity as a key tenet of your personal and professional brand. You have to find what you stand for, and you have to stick with it. Popularity is not going to get you the board seat or the executive position. Another comment, especially from corporate women, I see a lot of entrepreneurs, of women in creative industries, but what we hear a lot is, well, you know, I'm not a social media influencer, I'm not creative, I don't really need this. I work for a very strong corporate brand, and that gives me a brand as well. The reality is that the more senior you get, the more it is about your personal brand, and the less it should be about the corporate brand. Because you don't know if the corporate brand is going to be there in the future. Changes happen. There are events happening to corporates, and you want to make sure that you have your own brand that's valuable in the market. And the last one is about time. I am already busy. I don't have time to spend on this. Very relatable, very understandable. but also a fallacy, because once you have done that initial investment into your own brand, it will save you time down the line. It will save you time when you do business development. It will save you time because you don't have to explain your story over and over and over again. All of these are reasons why you should care. You should care at the beginning of your career, but you will not have as much material to build up. But if you do this consistently over time, you will build your brand, and you should particularly care if you are very senior, because this is the time when the brand is the strongest and when it also allows you to give back. Now, before we go into how can you build your brand, a very important distinction, identity and brand. And there is a big difference for corporates, but also for executives. Your identity is a very specific concept. You are not only one person. You have multiple identities. You are the executive, you are the mother, you are the friend, you are the mentor, you are the accomplished ballroom dancer, and you are the auditor. You have many different identities in yourself that all together make up the puzzle of who you are. It is often not purpose-built, it is subconscious. There's a lot that comes from your upbringing, from your education, which you haven't chosen. It is part of you, and you incorporate it into yourself. And identity changes. You get married, suddenly you have an identity as a wife. You change a position, you find a new passion in sustainability, and it becomes part of your identity. Identity evolves, identity changes. There's a core that stays the same, but it is a fluid concept. A brand is conscious. It is purpose-built. You work on it. It just doesn't happen by accident. It is clear and it is stable over time, because the more reliable your brand is, the more recognizable you are in your company, in your environment, in the market, in the community. What you stand for personally or professionally is important, but more important for a brand is what others perceive you to be. You can say, I stand for environmental protection. If that's not communicated, if that is something you do in your own time, no one knows about it, it is not your brand. If you want this to be your brand, you have to purposefully establish it and work on it. Also, word of warning, the more senior you get, you will have a brand. If you don't take charge of your narrative, someone else will. It's better you are ahead of your story than you leave this open to others' interpretation. Especially for women, that is very true. So many women focus so much on delivering on the different elements of their life, in their personal life, in their community life, in their work life, that they forget about this aspect. A brand is going to be established, but you should be in charge of the narrative. If you don't do that early enough, you have to work even harder to correct it later on. And the more senior you get, the more this is true. Now, connected to that is authenticity. Building a brand that's not authentic to you, you can do, but is highly ineffective. So, just an example for me, I am not a fashion person. Can I build a brand around me with a lot of professional support, with people that take photo shoots, with me looking at articles, posting, using social media? I probably can. It's just not authentic. And it will be found out. The first time you see me in jeans and t-shirt in the playground with my daughters, it will be very obvious that this is just the facade. We have seen that a lot, that people have built a brand and suddenly the brand collapsed. And the disappointment is big. As a professional businesswoman, you do not want this to happen. So what's really important is you need to understand your identity first so that you can be authentic. Typically, it's difficult to do this by yourself. Only through introspection, it will be very difficult for you to understand how you're being perceived. What do others see about you? You might have a very different view of that. So you typically need input from outside to understand what is currently your brand and what do you want it to be and what do you have to do in order to get there. So authenticity is key. The best brands are built on authenticity, reliability, consistency. It's the same message, but from different angles. If you care about, let's say, female empowerment, you can care about that from your professional corporate angle because you mentor women leaders in your company. You can care about from your personal angle because you go to school and you teach students about it. You can care about it from your community angle because you volunteer in certain institutions. So as soon as you find the topic for your brand, all your identities, all your different multifacets of your life can work on that brand together so that it's integrated and it's real. Now, a strong personal brand has to reflect who you are, and you will build on it over time. I just want to briefly highlight one example of how this works and why this is important. I'm German by origin, so this is an example that feels very natural to me. So our former Chancellor, Angela Merkel, very well known. Her brand, probably very recognizable, not only the visual brand of being extremely consistent when it comes to outfits, when it comes to hand gestures, when it comes to how she presents herself, but the messages, the content. Many people might not know that about her, but of course she grew up in Eastern Germany before the fall of the wall. She's the daughter of a priest. She was politically very active. She's a scientist, and she married a scientist. She has a PhD. So she is a very, very rational, data-oriented person. And she has been so from the beginning of her career. But what she also is she is very passionate about certain topics. And that's what brought her into politics. She wanted change in the country. So at the beginning of her career, she was a protege. She managed with her strong brand of being a very rational, very precise scientist to get a high-level sponsor. She had the former chancellor before her and the chairman of her party sponsoring her. And her first role was actually the Minister for Families in Germany after the wall came down. She was very consistent. She always stood for very unexcited data, facts, rationality in the government, reliability, and she always emphasized the European thought. For her, it was always about, we want to be part of the European concept. Those were her messages. Reliability, stability in the economy, in the society, and in the concert of the European nations. She has done that throughout her entire career. And that's what made her a reliable partner. And this brand was so strong that even in times when her popularity ratings and approval ratings were extremely, extremely low, there were times when she had an 11% popularity rating in Germany because people disagreed with her policies. But it didn't matter. She didn't care for the popularity. She didn't want to win the popularity contest. She was on brand, and she said, if that's not what you like, you can change me. But I will stick to what I believe is the right thing to do. That made her such a reliable partner that she left office with a 72% approval rating. So throughout her career, she stuck to what her brand is. And again, you can see that very consistently. She was extremely recognizable in her role. So she earned her respect, and she earned a lot of influence just by having a very, very strong, authentic brand that was linked to her identity. She didn't make it up. It was really her. Now, of course, she had a very long career as well, so she had time to build on that. Building a brand is not something you do overnight, and it often needs help. There are just a few learnings before I hand over to Julia, who has a lot more examples and substance on that, but some learnings that are really important to bear in mind when you think about your brand or what it is today and what you want it to be. Today, you are a multifaceted identity. You have different aspects. It's a rich tapestry of who you are. One word doesn't typically describe you as a person. For a brand, you need an elevator pitch. Whomever you introduce yourself in this audience, for example, you should have the one sentence that explains why you're here, what you do, who you are, what you are about. A brand is concise, and a brand is something that you live with every facet of your identity. The second one is it's not just an item on your to-do list. So if you say, okay, I understand now, I have to build a brand, I'm senior, I'd like to join a board, I need to write a board biography at some point to talk to people like Laura, I'll add it to the to-do list, I'll get to it at some point. Embrace the exercise. It's a journey where you first understand your identity, who you are, what is credible about you, and you ask questions about how others see you, and sometimes it's interesting what you learn about yourself. Embrace this as an exercise in getting to know yourself better. It's not a task on the to-do list. It is really a transformation and an understanding about yourself. And then get help. Typically, building a very strong executive brand is not something you just do internally. You ask colleagues, you ask for feedback, you try to understand how others have done it. It's a process where you should enlist help. You don't have to do this by yourself. And be open to listen. Sometimes, when you hear what people think about your current brand, it's not what you want to hear. It is very different from how you perceive yourself. That can be good, that can be bad, but you have to listen and you have to accept it, because this is your current brand, and if you want to shift it, you have to consciously work on it. Another topic that is dear to my heart for female executives in particular is the networking topic. In general, executives, but in particular women, overemphasize what Harvard sociologist Robert Putnam calls the bonding capital. You network within your industry, within your company, within your community, within the industry, or within the function that you are in. So you attend the conferences for your specific area. Chances are you meet a lot of people like you in these conferences. So standing out from that crowd is very difficult because many have a similar biography, they might have similar stories, they have similar interests. You need what is called the bridging capital, and this is a fantastic example of something like that. You network across industries, where on a table like this in a CFO conference, you would all be sitting with CFOs. So yeah, you can bond, you can share, you can commiserate, but standing out is difficult. Right now, there are many different individuals on every table, across industries, across countries. You might be the only CFO on that table. So this is much more interesting. You can actually see how to position yourself. What's the standout factor? So bridging capital is important. Many executives, male or female, don't do that often enough and strategic and consistently enough, but it is critical for you to really establish your brand also outside of the area that you're already known in and where everyone is very similar to you. And the last one, and that again is particular for women, always difficult, do good, be good at your job, be successful, but talk about it. And it feels unnatural and it feels wrong to self-promote, because that's something that has been taught and that has been always ingrained in us. But it is critical. Without that, it is very difficult. When we do executive searches, we take references. Not only of people that have worked with you very closely, but of people who might know of you to understand what your reputation in the market is. If people say, never heard about that person, no idea, maybe she's good, maybe she's not, no, I don't know. It doesn't mean you're a strong influencer in your industry. If you don't want to do that to yourself, have others do it on your behalf. Try to find conferences where you, thought pieces, position yourself, go into associations. There is always a way, if that is something that is not your nature and you cannot overcome that, how you can enlist your ecosystem to help with that. Voluntarily or involuntarily, they might know or not, but point is, you need to do this. And especially for women, that's something that we often see when they come to us and they say, I've had 25 years as a senior executive, I would now like to go on a board. And we ask them, let's write your board biography. What are your key successes? They find it very difficult to talk about it. And they have. And we help them and we talk with them. But point is, you should have that as an elevator speech. You should not need someone to ask you that question to be able to say it and not reflect on it first. So these are just some learnings from our end. Authenticity is critical. You have to know yourself, you have to know your identity to link your brand. And a brand is going to happen. So better be ahead of the narrative and take charge of your own brand building. And with that, I'll hand over to Julia.
Good morning, everybody. It's such a pleasure being here today. Seeing the full house on Saturday morning gives me a huge energy to talk about a very important topic that Laura sets the stage so nicely. I think listening to her made me understand even more so that building your own brand is a full-time job. Building a brand in social media is twice that effort. So I would like to ask collectively today answer 4 simple questions. Is why, who, what, and how. And one of the most important questions is why. Why do you want to do it? Because the purpose defines what you want to talk about and which platform you would like to land and what exact image you would like to build in social media. All of these questions are intertwined because while deciding why you want to do it, you also would like to answer the question who. Who about yourself, but also about who your audience is. Because if you want to become an influencer and speak to millions of people, this is your B2C model. You would like to engage on many different platforms with the world. This is one concept. If you would like to speak about your company or your product, this would be more like a B2B model, and your audience potentially will be quite narrow and will also define the specific platforms you would like to address the topics. For instance, you would choose LinkedIn over Instagram or YouTube. At the same time, there's a very big topic about your internal brand, how you would like to build this brand internally in your organizations, but also with yourself. And I would like to address all of these questions today in my talk. I come from traditional media. Many years ago, before Google, I worked in a traditional media where traditionally when you had your own personal brand, you build it, as Laura was talking about, in conferences, you gave speeches, and the highlight of that could be that you speak on TV. And this is a very one-way street. You have a lot of communication coming from you, but not necessarily directing back at you. While you're building your brand on social media, it's a two-way street. And it brings both a lot of advantages because you have ability to interact with your audience, but it also brings a lot of risks. And with that, you have to be even more strategic and very much more conscious about what you say. Because these days, what you say cannot be undone. And even if you want so much to delete what you've said by mistake, out of context, a lot of times you cannot. And life was way more easier when you just had a TV speech which could be edited, and then you had a proof stamp on it, and then off we go. But these are not the cases, and I've seen many mistakes done unintentionally by very good people that hurt not only their personal brand, but their career and their life. So let's all be aware that these are the consequences that we all bear when we decide to be public in front of millions of people. A separate topic, what Laura was starting to touch upon, is your multiple identities. When you go out there in social world, you need to decide if you want to become one or many. Because a lot of times these many identities will not match with each other and confuse your audience. And then you would probably reach not the desired result you would want. In my life, I'll just give you a couple of examples. When people actually had to consciously create multiple identities to be out there, because their identities were, either not, their previous identities either were not needed on social media, and they had to change them into something else to speak to their audiences. A very good friend of mine in Russia, a top executive, he had his entire career in business, and he had no desire to build a personal brand, and he was not on social media, and he was engaged in his business activities, and at some point he went to a doctor. He got a quite sad diagnosis about his state of health, and he decided to change his life. It was about 10 years ago. He decided to take things into his own hands. He got very passionate about it, and he thought about spending half of his time learning, but also communicating with larger audience about preventive medicine and all of the things you can do to your health to live longer. And then he quickly realized that his identities were clashing, that when he started talking about it, his previous identity stood up, and people didn't understand, why is this guy from business who's dealing with metals and mining or other different commercial activities talking about preventive medicine? So what he did, he actually created a separate profile for himself with a different name. He trademarked it, and he later on published a book under his name and has a very, very social presence in media, in many different channels, completely unrelated to his previous identity, which actually has a nice life altogether because he hasn't abandoned it. At the same time, we also see a lot of people who talk about life in general, and then, if it's their conscious effort to mix and match the identities, that's also okay. One thing that is not okay is not to think about it. Because I come from Google, and one of the biggest Google platforms is YouTube, I also would like to talk a little bit about YouTube in particular, because again, when you decide on your platform, it could be Instagram, it could be Facebook, it could be YouTube, it could be LinkedIn, but video becomes a very powerful message to convey yourself. And unlike written word, it's a different type of activity, because with video, you all become creators. And that means that if you thought you had twice the job, you now need to multiply it by 3. Because not only you need to learn how to create video and present in a video format is a completely different art compared to when you write, you need to be consistent and stable about it, because your audience will not wait for a month for you to create a piece of content. A lot of people with full-time jobs, when they engage on this YouTube road, when they want to build a personal brand or a corporate brand on YouTube, they actually have to at least daily post something, because this is what the audience expects. And then creating a 15-minute video, or even a 5-minute video, sometimes could take hours to do. But YouTube is a very powerful platform. In this part of the world, people spend between 50 to 75 minutes daily watching YouTube. And so if you would like to reach the audiences that are millions, and here, again, in MENA, it's over 90% reach for YouTube. This is the channel you probably cannot dismiss. I'll give later a couple of examples of how great successful women in this region build their brands on YouTube. But before this, I actually would like to talk a little bit about your internal brand. Because when you think of yourself out there in the social media, the first question you need to answer and to ask and answer is about yourself. How you view yourself, and how confident you are in building this brand and actually engaging with your audience. And you need to be prepared that not all of your audience will be favorable to you. How you respond to the questions that are hateful in nature, and we see a lot of that too. A lot of times, even if you don't do anything, you need to think about your response time and your response in general about when your name is engaged on some other platforms, because you already stand for yourself, even without you doing anything in particular. So all of the things you need to consider. Also, when speaking about internal brand, a lot of times we as women feel less assured that we can speak and be out there. And just to give you a Google example, we have a program inside Google called I'm Remarkable. It was born 10 years ago by a couple of female engineers internally when they realized that women were, even in a company like Google, were much less so confident about speaking about their successes and their personal stories that are successful. Inside Google engineering organization, you actually get self-promoted. So in order for you to be promoted, you self-apply. And they looked around, those women, and realized that for men much more so applied for promotion than women. In fact, they were like 60 or 50% ready for a promotion. They thought it was time to apply. For women, they had to be ready 150%. And so they created this program. It's like a 2-3 hour seminar where women actually thought very consciously and actively about why I am good and how to talk about it. And this program went out of Google. In the last years, there were over 3,000 organizations globally. Only in Russia, I think there were only 100,000 people that were trained on this program. At some point, we realized that it was actually not only about women, but a lot of people in underrepresented groups, people who just finished schools and didn't have any job experience. They had harder time promoting themselves compared to the people with experience. People with disabilities, people before retirement age also looking for jobs. And so altogether, this program became a manifest about how you can build your own self-confidence internally within yourself. And this is a great start before you actually start building this persona out there in the social media. Now I actually would like to talk about great women out there in social media, but I don't see my presentation. Is it possible to, are we having issues on the, no? Can we put slides on? Okay, I can do it like, would I click? Okay. So just to give you a couple of more examples from this region about courageous, great women who actually break the stereotypes and want to engage with a very large audience on YouTube, speaking about different topics. This is Abir Sinder. She has close to 1 million subscribers on YouTube. She is talking about beauty from different shapes and angles. And she would like to break stereotypes about conventional beauty, which a lot of times has no relationship to real women around us. And she talks about it from her own perspective, and she has a lot of followers. Another example is, and I was trying to bring examples of women who actually do want to do something different. It's not associated either with this topic or this area. Another great example is Rima. She has over 7 million subscribers, and she talks about gaming in this area, which normally is associated with men. And she's breaking the stereotypes. She's also, her audience is actually not only women, it's very mixed. Gaming has been on the rise in the last 5 years, especially with COVID. There's a huge gaming industry inside Google. When I was asking them about gaming and the segmentation of gamers, they said, you cannot really talk about it like this anymore because everybody plays games. And so Rima is out there talking about gaming and teaching the audience about how to engage and also depicting that women can be about anything they choose to be. Another great example is Zainab. She's an Iraqi pharmacist, para-athlete, and television presenter. She does not have a leg, and she's showing on her TV channel how she lives every day. She's a great inspiration to a lot of people with disabilities that you can lead a very fulfilling life, and life can be inspirational, and this is another great example. And the last example is Rehab. She's a life coach from Egypt, and she talks about very sensitive topics like divorce, self-love, acceptance, family violence. These topics that are very critical to talk about, but in many different areas of the world are hard to talk about. So just to give you a few examples, these are the very courageous, brave women that are out there ready to speak with multi-million audience about the subject that are dear to their heart. I cannot agree more with Laura about that you need to really be passionate about it and identify with anything that you decide to talk about. You cannot really outsource this to a group of PR specialists and just kind of sit out there not representing it for yourself. And lastly, I would like to show you a video about I'm Remarkable, just to finish my presentation on the topic of self-love. And it all starts with ourselves before we even would like to go and venture out there. Can we start the video, please? What do I do? Larry, can we start the video? Sorry for the technical issue. I think you just click the link in the presentation. Yes.
Please write down your answer to I'm remarkable because.
So I'm remarkable because.
It's really hard.
Okay, I'm done.
How did it feel to write it?
Weird.
Hard?
Would you mind reading it out loud?
Oh my god. I'm remarkable. I'm remarkable because all the kids that I have taught actually love me and they still remember me till this day.
After I turned 40, for the first time in my life, I also tried things that I'm not very good at.
I can rhyme really well, but don't ask me to right now.
I'm funny. I think I am.
I follow my dreams once I figure them out.
I am remarkable because I challenge myself every day, even if these are small challenges.
Because I want my life to have meaning.
I'm remarkable because I survived cancer when I was 17.
Because I'm optimistic.
When I'm in tough situations, I stop and I smile.
I'm a pretty good mom. Like, I think I'm really doing a good job. That's it.
So how did it feel to say it out loud?
It felt kind of nice to say it out loud.
Pretty good.
I think it's easier to say why we're not doing that well, to criticize ourselves.
You feel like you may have only one or two things to say, and then you realize that you have more, and you have more.
There's so many great things going on that when I forget it, all I have to do is think about these things, and then it's like a chiropractic adjustment in my mood. It's like,
It makes you think, like, what else can I do?
We have Sheikha Sharma here, and we're going to have to start soon. with the next session, but I would entertain one or two questions, but very quick and very quick answers. This was terrific, you two. Thank you so much. And you are all remarkable in this room. So you know one of your assignments? You're going to do your elevator speech during those times we have to go up and down and are waiting for the elevator, okay? Figure that out. One sentence. Okay, one quick question, anybody? You have no questions about how to make your brand? You're gonna be shy about this? Here we go.
Hi, I have no more voice. On your own personal standpoint, where did you guys start to build your own personal brands? Because that's usually the place where there's the most friction.
I actually decided consciously that I don't want to build my personal brand in social media because I didn't want to spend 300 hours editing videos. And I decided to concentrate on building a corporate brand associated with Google. Well, this is the company I've been for 10 years, so and I think it's easier to talk about Google than in general, but I think my major audience has been around customers, policymakers and government, because a lot of lobbying and negotiations and discussions were around the GR work and also the business community. And I consciously decided that my social media was for my personal use. So a lot of times you actually can't even, it's not even open to public, and I have no Instagram account, by the way. So, but it was my conscious strategic decision. Again, it may change in the future, but it is what it is right now.
Laura, anything to add?
So this is it's a very random sample, but very similar. I don't have an Instagram account.
Mike, it's a big room.
This one's working. Very similar, but it's a random sample. It's not statistically relevant. My main role is serving the government. So if I have a brand that is not what will serve me in my profession, because I work a lot behind the scenes, but you should think about it as early as possible, because there will be topics you're passionate about that you want to stand for. And again, you can work on that over time. It's not as if you have to have the perfectly fleshed out solution in the beginning. But there will be things that are so core to your identity, you will always care about them, no matter where you're going. So the answer would be, start with it early. That leaves you more time to really become known and stand for something.
Very quickly, because Her Royal Highness is here.
Hi, I'll be quick. My name is Berta. I come from Iceland. I have a question regarding incorporating two brands. For example, if you start off by branding yourself as a person and are successful in that area, later founding a company, that your branding company is small and the company is you as well. So you have two social media platforms or two platforms that you're working with, which is a lot of work. So my question is regarding how do you incorporate the two together? Do you merge or do you keep them separate? Or, yeah, well, this is my dilemma at the moment. So any advice I would greatly appreciate.
My advice would be to not thinking about how much work it creates, but rather think about what you achieve by merging or non-merging those two brands together. Because there are pros and cons to both ways. If you merge, then you probably will not be, your personal brand may overbear your corporate brand, and then if any problems arises, you will not be able to disassociate. And I've seen different examples of when people create a personal brand linked in with a corporate brand where it works. But also there are quite a number of examples where people have a personal brand not associated with their business brand, and their business brand has its own stand and develops nicely. So I think it's, I understand that it's double the work a lot of times, but just, answer those questions to yourself, and then I think you'll have your answer.
I'm afraid that's the last question. Sorry, we have to start soon.